Hi, hello, how you doing? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Mariana, but you can call me Mari, and today I will be discussing all the books I've read this year because I have been reading, I have been doing things, and I wanted to talk about it. So here I am, back on the YouTube, Le YouTube. Honestly, this year has been a pretty good year for reading. So far, I've read 13 books, which is, quite good. I would say that last year was definitely not my best year for reading, so I tried to make a conscious decision to read more this year, and also just to explore more genres and keep reading maybe novels that I haven't heard of before, or exploring more contemporary fiction. I've been really researching Italian authors, so just lots of different ideas popping up into my brain. But so far so good, I've been reading some pretty good novels, and I mean, let's begin with a banger. I read Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. This is a fan fiction, and I did read it last year too. What can I say? I think this is just going to be a tradition. I'm going to begin every single year by reading this fan fiction because it brings me joy. And this fan fiction is set a few years, I think like 10 years after the events of the main series. And we follow Draco Malfoy as he is head Auror, and he is sent into a mission to work with Hermione Granger. And they obviously don't like each other. They have a past. We know this from reading the books. But honestly, I would say that even if you don't know or don't enjoy Harry Potter, you may enjoy this fanfiction because it is such a good slow burn. It is such a good enemies to lovers, or not even, just like they just dislike each other. Because usually when you say enemies to lovers, you think like they absolutely hate each other. And in this case, I just think they dislike each other. It makes it a bit spicier. It's such joy. I giggle, I laugh, I cry a bit, but honestly, more than anything, I just think this is a fun read, and it's very well written, and I think it's going to be traditionally published this year, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe I'll read it again next year as an actual novel to support this author, because I think this is one of the best just works of romance I've ever read, and it's a fanfiction. So yes. Point being, I love this. I will be hopefully reading more like it. If you have any suggestions, please do let me know. I've been searching for something to top this fanfiction in particular for a year now, and since it didn't, I picked it up again. So I gave it 4 stars yet again. And yeah, then I read Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. Editing Mariana here. I think her name is actually Adalyn and not Adalyn, so I'm sorry for that. But I think that's how her name is actually pronounced. And this was a very interesting take. We follow a girl who can see death, and she's the only one who has this ability. And she has some type of supernatural powers linking her to this entity. And again, she doesn't understand why. People around her tend to die, and she just has a very tragic life, and she blames it all on death, who follows her around. So I would say, if you like gothic vibes, if some sort of alternative romance doesn't deter you from reading romance, I would say this is a very, 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 very good novel. I would compare it to Mexican Gothic. It reminded me of that. And I would say the big reveal in this novel is not very well hidden. I think that's the point of it, to be honest. But even if I knew what was coming from a mile away, I still really loved it. I really like the character as well. I think she's a very cool 19-year-old to follow around. Didn't really annoy me to read from her perspective. Even though she's young, she does have quite insight into life, and the people that she becomes friends with, or the people surrounding her, are also interesting characters. This is actually a standalone, but I know that it has like a series. So what I've heard is that we follow a different character for the second book, but that is linked to this story. So the ending is a bit open-ended, but at the same time, I treated it as just a standalone, and I really liked it. Decided not to continue necessarily now because I think I really enjoyed this first installment. So, I mean, if you really like the rest, please do let me know and I will keep reading. But for now, I decided to leave it there and I really enjoyed it. Then I read Mistborn, The Final Empire, and I rated it 5 stars. I have fallen down the best kind of rabbit hole. I've been reading a lot of Brandon Sanderson lately, and this is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. And I had read it in 2017, I want to say, but I didn't remember it very well. And then I started dating. It is a fully committed relationship, not just dating, to clarify. A wonderful, wonderful man last year who's kind of a nerd like me, and he likes to read. So he reads a lot of fantasy, and he inspired me to read the Stormlight Archives last year, and that took me a while. After that, I was feeling a bit down because I finished, you know, this whole arc, 5 books. And then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna revisit Mistborn, because also I used to think Vin, the main character in this novel, was very annoying. And then after reading it again, I have to say I love her. So I was wrong. Marianne of the past, you were wrong. And if you have never heard of this, the premise of this trilogy is that we follow a world where the bad guy won. For 1,000 years, the Lord Ruler has been ruling the world. And it's in decay. And it's pretty bad for our main characters. They're not having the time of their lives. And in this novel, we follow Vin, who is part of the Ska class, which are like the working people, but also slaves of in this society. And she joins a crew of criminals or bandits. And it's so much more than that, but I don't really want to give anything away because I think this is a fantasy novel that I would actually recommend to absolutely everyone and anyone. So if you've ever heard of Brandon Sanderson and you want to start reading any of his books, I would 100% say start with Mistborn. It is really, really, really incredible. It's an amazing series. So I gave it 5 stars. Obviously, I read The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages, and I also gave it 5 stars, which are the sequels to Mistborn, The Final Empire. So I'll just leave that there, and then I will go on to reviewing the next series that I read that I actually had to kind of DNF. I read the first and second book and I decided I'm not going to continue. I think it's a 4 or 5 book saga. Not sure, to be honest. I know that the 4th book is being published this year, if I'm not mistaken, but to be fair, I just really didn't like it as much. It's called The Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole, and it was very hyped. Like, it was very, very recommended to me on Instagram or YouTube, and I thought I would really enjoy it because it's meant to be enemies to lovers, slow burn, but to be fair, I found it actually very insta-lovey. We follow a girl who is special, and the plot, to be fair, is very interesting because we have this division between humans and descendants, and the descendants rule the world. The humans are completely segregated, and this girl is a human, but she's also special because her eyes are different, so she looks kind of like a descendant. And obviously there are hints there that something may be off, but she is able to hide and work and do her life as a human until she crosses paths with the descendants, and then she has to face her future and her path. And it's just very tropey, I would say. It's a very standard novel, fantasy novel, romantasy novel. So if romance is not what you're looking for, I would say this would still be interesting, but to be fair, the romance is what pushes the story forward. And what I found the most disappointing about this novel was the protagonist, because she has, you know, she is one of those strong female characters that her only character trait is to be spicy. Like, she just gets angry, she is feisty, and that's all fine and well, but you have to add a personality to that. Like, your character can't be just this you know, girl who's just angry all the time, but then makes the worst decisions in the world. Everything works out for her. She is super powerful. Everyone loves her, but then also hates her because she's special. And it's just a very, again, tropey idea that women just have to fit within this mold of being either super powerful and, again, like a strong female character who has no flaws in the sense that they are very self-righteous and they're always right, and she just gives me this feeling of girl boss, but girl boss to the max, where you're like, girl, please sit down, take a break, breathe, drink some tea, and like, I don't know, think about your decisions before you jump into the conclusions. And then the only person who seemed to want to help her, she immediately distrusted, and then she trusted absolutely everyone else who were clearly not looking out for her. So it's just a very frustrating situation. And it's not that I don't like reading from unlikable characters, because you'll see later I read another book with a female character who's very strong but also very flawed, and I really loved it. But in this case, it was too infuriating, and it got worse on the second book. Like, her inner monologue was driving me insane. So even though I thought the plot was interesting and I thought the novel itself was interesting enough for me to continue reading on to the second book, then by the time I got to the second book, I was like, girl, I can't listen to you talk anymore. So the first book I gave 3 stars. And then the second book, Glow of the Everflame, I gave 2 stars, and I will not be continuing on. Yeah, no interested in reading this saga further. And then I read Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, and this book has been everywhere for years, and I've always meant to read it. I didn't know what it was about. I just knew that it was about a woman in the field of chemistry, and honestly, I thought there would be some magic realism, but it just wasn't the case. And in this novel, we follow a chemist, Elizabeth Zott, in the 1960s, working in a lab, or trying to work in a lab, trying to make it as a chemist in a field where women are not very well recognized, where it is really difficult to make any sort of advancement without your male counterparts taking all of the credit. So it was just a very infuriating read, in the sense of there's just so many realities that obviously women face every day, and we know and we see it. I had kind of taken a break from these types of novels, in the sense of I was reading a lot of fantasy and just kind of was thrown back into a very strong criticism of STEM, especially during the 1960s, where this character is really trying her best and then everything seems to be going against her. And I understand that a lot of people criticize it because of that reason, because it goes to the extreme, I would say. But I would say that's realistic for what it used to be in those times. I mean, even though we get a very strong female character who is a bit of a girl boss, and in the sense of like she is a bit apathetic and struggles to communicate with people. And I would say that she's definitely not neurotypically coded. So that may help also, for me at least, it helped understand also how she approached situations. And I just really liked the story overall, and I really liked the characters. I really liked the dog. There is a dog in this novel, and it stole my heart, and I love him. So yeah, I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I do see the criticism, and I recognized it in my review on Goodreads, but I think, again, it's very straightforward, and if it's something that interests you, I would say definitely pick it up, because it's worth a read. I really enjoyed it. And then, following up with more Brenda Sanderson, I read The Alloy of Law. So again, 2017, I read the first trilogy, and then I didn't continue the series. So I had never read the next books in the Mistborn world. But this happens 300 years after the first trilogy, and we follow 2 completely different main characters, and it was fun. I would say I don't really want to go too much into it, because if you haven't read the first trilogy, I would say maybe don't start with this one. But I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it enough. So yeah, I will keep reading the rest of the novels in this series. So we'll see how I feel by the end. And then I read my favorite novel so far this year, which was very popular. And I didn't know it was popular because I haven't really been on booktube or haven't really been watching too much booktube. So I picked this up because my boyfriend recommended it to me, and I trust his taste because he's given me very good recommendations. But I read Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang, and I loved it. I absolutely adored the novel. I gave it 5 stars. And in this novel, we follow a girl who is part of a magistry. And she has been working all her life to become this high mage and get access to a research program where no woman has ever been able to access before. She would be the first one if she's able to pass a test. And so the first few chapters we follow her as she is trying to enter kind of like a ministry of magic, where she will be able to prove herself and show these men that she's capable of doing exactly the same as they are able to do. However, things occur, and then she ends up finding out that her world is a lot more screwed up than she thinks. And it's honestly, the first chapter of this novel will stay ingrained in my brain forever. It is gruesome, and it's brutal, and it's crazy, and honestly the reveals, though I did see some of them coming, most of them were just such a shock to me, and I was taken aback by the writing. I haven't read a standalone fantasy novel that was this good and this well crafted. And when I was talking about a strong female character that is also flawed, I was referring to her. Siona is very infuriating, but in the best of ways, because you see her character growth throughout the novel and you learn things with her. And as a reader, you understand her. You may not like her, but you understand her. And actually, while talking to my boyfriend about this, I said to him that I don't like her. He thinks differently, but in my case, I couldn't come to like her. I understood her by the end of the novel, and I liked her a bit more. But it was an interesting conversation to have, to see that, you know, she is a very unlikable character in the sense of how, you know, she begins the story and how we see her kind of process the world, but because of her context, it's hard for her not to have had those ideas. I'm being very vague, but I just don't want to give anything away, so I'll stop talking about it now. But I really highly recommend this novel if you haven't picked it up for some reason, because again, everyone's been talking about it, but it's just so good. So this will definitely make it into my favorites of this year for sure, and I keep thinking about it. So yeah, Blood Over Bright Haven, 5 stars. For sure. Then I read, so I've been doing a bit of research for my master thesis, and I've been reading many different works and essays and things that talk about werewolf, and specifically werewomen. So I picked up Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison, which is a novel about a girl who one day gets bitten by a werewolf, and then she becomes a werewolf, and it's kind of like Teen Wolf, but for women. And I just really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and the protagonist is just, you know, a regular woman who just gets bitten by a werewolf, and like, what do you do? But the novel is a bit more than that. I think once you start analyzing her past, and she starts kind of like having to process a lot of trauma because of what she's going through, you see that this is kind of like a metaphor for her transformation in real life. So very fun book. I don't know if I will include it for my thesis, but it was a very fun read, especially because I've been really wanting to rewatch Teen Wolf. I mean, I rewatched the first season last year, so I really want to rewatch, I think, the second, but especially the 3rd season, because it's really good. So yeah, I plan on doing that this year, and I give it 4 stars. Then I read The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, and I love books about unhinged women, so I picked this up thinking that it was gonna be along the lines of Night Bitch, or even just anything written by Atessa Moshfegh that is a bit weird and unhinged. I liked La Vana, which I read like 2-3 years ago. But this one was a bit much. And I don't say that in the sense of like disturbing. I think writing disturbing novels is something that I admire. Like if you're able to captivate your audience with such a story that brings you to cringe and gives you like the ick, I really enjoy that. I think it's a good exploration of the human psyche, and then you can talk about horror as a reflection of society and societal fears and worries. But in this case, I think it was a bit much in the sense of this was showing everything wrong with men to the extreme. So after reading a couple of books dealing with misogyny and then having to, having women figure out their place in a society that won't stand up for them, that won't listen to them, obviously it was infuriating to read the experience of this girl. We follow a woman who is in university, and she just started university, so she's very young still, and her mom and her dad separate at the beginning of the novel, and then kind of everything unravels from there. It's a bit cannibalistic, but very 0 to 100 very quickly. The resolution at the end of the novel is kind of strange, and I really didn't like it per se. Again, it's just that every single man in this novel sucks. And I understand in general the rage against men. Like, I feel it, I know, but I do think there is a caricaturesque limit to some things. I understand where it's coming from. I do appreciate it in some senses, and I've read novels that also deal with it in a much better way. I would say even Lessons on Chemistry is better in some ways. I just felt like the unnecessary violence, and again, the resolution of this novel was a bit out there and a bit strange. But, if you like it, good for you. And as many reviewers said, good for her. It just wasn't for me. So I gave it 2 stars. And again, my opinion's completely subjective. And if this sounds interesting to you, like a cannibal woman, I would say this is a pretty disturbing novel. I will say A Certain Hunger by Chelsea Summers, I think is her name, is a better novel about cannibal women. But yeah, so was expecting something else, wasn't necessarily disappointed, but I also didn't enjoy it as much, so again, I give it 2 stars. And then I read another incredible fantasy novel written by M.L. Wong, and I think she's become one of my favorite writers. I will read anything she publishes because this is another standalone that was very, very good. We follow a boy who lives in a warrior school that is very deep in the mountains, so they don't get a lot of foreigners, but one day this foreign boy joins the school, and then they strike up a friendship, and then his entire world turns upside down when he learns that things are not the way he thinks. And we follow also the perspective of his mom, so we also get a female character that also has to deal with her own prejudices. And yeah, I don't want to say much about it because it's a very good book to go into blind. There is, I will say, a structure in this novel that I have never seen before in fantasy, because usually when you read fantasy, most of the big battles, and especially in Brandon Sanderson, for example, a lot of the climax and the action happens at the very end. But I will say in this novel, everything happens in the middle. And that was very, very interesting. I am intrigued again to see what else this author comes up with, because I really do enjoy her writing. I enjoy her characters most of all. I think she is excellent at writing characters, relationships, and just humanness, human nature in general. So that was the last book I read, and I give it 5 stars. So I think I've been doing pretty well with my reading. I am wearing my pajamas. I did record this video kind of impromptu because I just wanted to talk about the books that I've been reading, and I wanted to make another video. I miss making videos. So hopefully we'll see each other soon. If you like this video, please subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Drink some water, stay hydrated, and I will see you very soon with another video soon. Bye bye.